Good morning, dear Dharma friends. Starting with a poem. Very brief, it's in the chat. From Michael White. Enough. These few words are enough. If not these words, this breath. If not this breath, this sitting here. This opening to the life we have refused again and again. Until now. Until now. Enough. These few words are enough. If not these words, this breath. If not this breath, this sitting here. This opening to the life we have refused again and again. Until now. Until now. Wow. So, good morning, dear Dharma friends. Friends on the journey. I'm Robert Beatty. I'm coming to you from Portland, Oregon. We've been doing this for, a long time now, since March. What a wonderful opportunity to get together each morning and do something of such importance. This is a broadcast of the Portland Insight Meditation Community. And if you go to portlandinsight.org, you will discover a vast array of teachings and online offerings. And it's a bit of a cluttered site, but there's a great amount of information there that can be really useful. Guided meditations. You'll also find robertbeatty.com interesting. There's some beautiful audio-visual things on the homepage to watch, but also there's lots of information there. And a blog where mostly it's poetry. So, all that said, well, I remember, Janine, I saw you come aboard here. Would you be willing to speak about the social justice gathering when we do announcements? Yeah, thank you. I had a lovely conversation with Tiffany last night. So let us keep to ritual. Got myself a little boxed in here. Move over. And I suppose to honor the circumstances that had many very upset yesterday, there's been some uproar. There's been some uproar in the capital. Frightening. Some people found it angering. How did it affect you? When we first got the center, there was opposition. We lost about half of our community when we bought the center, which is not uncommon. And Achan Pasano, who had been the abbot of a monastery in Thailand for 15 years, Wat Pananachat, gave me a lot of advice. One thing he said was, this would be the most painful thing you've ever done in your life. And he was right, except for marriage and divorce. Custody battle, those were pretty painful too. But the point here is, if one leads something of that nature, there are those who really approve and those who really disapprove. And so there is personal admiration and, wow, you're the best. And there's personal degradation, like you're the worst. And about a year or so in, I wrote to him and said, the praise and blame stuff is really a challenge. I get this praise and then I feel good, and I get this criticism, pretty intense, and then I feel bad. And he wrote back and said in an email, praise, blame, praise, blame, praise, blame. Up, down, up, down, up, down, until you just give up and get off the ride. So there's the vicissitudes of life. Life feels safe, life feels unsafe. There's pleasure, there's pain, there's gain and loss, there's success, there's failure. And the Dharma is intended to create for us a context which is bigger than all the ups and downs. Which is why we take refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha rather than anything else. I take refuge in the Buddha, the one who shows me the way in this life. Namo Buddhaya, Namo Buddhaya, Buddhaya. Namo Buddhaya. I take refuge in the Dharma, the way of understanding and love. Namo Dharmaya, Namo Dharmaya, Namo Dharmaya. I take refuge in the Sangha, the community of mindful harmony. Namo Sanghaya, Namo Sanghaya, Namo Sanghaya. We are at the beginning of another day, of this day. How shall I approach this day? There's absolutely no predicting what's going to happen. It could be a day when much goes as I wish, or a day when the floor falls out. The news could be relatively quiet, or it could be uproar. There could be peace in our relationships, or there could be conflict. We could get news that will make us very happy, or news that will provoke unhappiness. I aspire to be mindful, to take the mind and its objects as a study, as a context in which to become more awake, more loving, and more compassionate. And we start right here. Come home to the breath. Come home to the body where it touches the floor, the cushions, where the clothing touches the body. Each breath each breath comes into being. I've been doing this very practice now. On January 20th, it'll be 50 years I've been doing this practice. Many, 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 many times of returning to the breath. Of noticing what else the mind is doing. One could ask, doesn't it get boring? At a certain point it does. But then it becomes really interesting. There is life and awareness of life. Each breath has a beginning. It has a rising to fullness. It has a decline and then a vanishing. There's a very helpful teaching from Ajahn Chah. It's called Taking the One Seat. And the image goes like this. There is a six-sided room. And you enter and sit down and close the door. There's a seat there. There's 6 windows. One is the eyes, another is ears and hearing, yet another is the nose and scent, and the tongue and taste. Then there's the body, the feeling body. And then there's the mind. And our task is to stay seated. Because the outer world will be clamoring sometimes. Take care of me, do this, do that. Don't just sit there. The inner world clamors with memories, past and future, fantasies, responsibilities, emotions. Fall into the trance with me. And each time we get pulled out the window, we lose the one seat. Sometimes it's body sensations, pleasant or unpleasant, pain. Sometimes it's desire and wanting something, or aversion and disliking something. We fall into the trance. Sometimes it's restlessness, agitation, worry. We get pulled out the window. Sometimes sloth and torpor, and we just kind of collapse to the floor. Sometimes it's doubt, and it's hard even to enter the room. But the one seat practice is very simple. It is to sit and to watch the show. To awaken again and again from the trance of life. The Tibetans call it awakening from the dream. It all seems so real, so urgent. And here you sit. Here, more accurately, sits some body. It breathes. Let's pay attention. Let's take the one seat. Mindfulness remembers to remember to be awake. It awakens in the middle of wandering minds. You can find yourself mired in the past. Hypnotically reliving events of yesterday or 30 years ago or more. Trying to solve the problem through thinking. And then mindfulness lights up. And suddenly, you're here. And there's awareness. Oh, that's thinking. That's memory. Or maybe there's worry. In the midst of a worry, there's waking up. Oh, right. That's thinking, emotions. Actually, I'm right here in this one seat. That is fantasy. And so we awaken from the trances of life into that presence which is not describable. Which is our true being, our true nature. Sometimes the wandering mind will last 1/10 of a second. The mind will turn toward a thought. The thought will begin to think itself, and the light of mindfulness will bathe it, and it ends there. Other times a thought will lead to another thought, will lead to another thought, will lead to an emotion and an association, and then perhaps a thinking storm begins. And then a few minutes, a few days later, mindfulness asserts itself. We don't need to be preoccupied with someday in the future when I will be enlightened, quote. It's right here. It's this awakening from the trance. There truly is no future, there's only now. We could add some love and compassion intention or phrases, or both, as part of the intention of how to carry forward into the whole day. On the in-breath, and you can use your auto-translator to turn this into any words you want or need. You could have this voice be a different voice altogether. It could be your voice or the voice of the Buddha or Kuan Yin. On the in-breath, may I be really content and happy. On the out-breath, may you, may the other, may someone you love, someone in this group, some friend, some relative, may they be really content and happy. On the in-breath, may I be free from identification with fear and danger and anger. May you be free from identification with fear and danger and anger. May I live with ease and grace. May you live with ease and grace. May my life become one great sigh of gratitude. May your life become one great long sigh of gratitude. When I am hurting and suffering, no matter how, may I hold myself in sweet, loving compassion. When you are hurting and suffering, may you hold yourself in sweet, loving compassion. May I remember to awaken from the trance, from the story, from the dream. May you remember to awaken from the trance, the story, and the dream. And maybe think of one of these phrases or something else that appeals to you. Think of carrying it through the day. No matter what you're doing, every now and then remembering, oh yes, here I am doing this and wishing myself well, wishing the other well, finding my way to that place of interbeing, which is much more realistic than my isolated, contracted self. And please now notice the entirety of the body that sits here. It's so alive. It's only life. Feet, legs, pelvis, abdomen, chest, sides, back, sacrum. Fingers, hands, thumbs, wrists, forearms, upper arms, shoulders, neck. Not an idea of this, not an image, but the experience of it. And the jaw and the cheeks, the tongue, the eyes and the forehead, and the scalp. The ears. And now bringing attention into the eyes themselves, the eyes as sensory experience, as body. Notice how they can roll around in their little beautiful sockets. And then making the plan, the intention to let the eyes open. And let's let them open with an intention of interbeing, of recognizing the other as oneself. Seeing. Thank you so much for joining together this morning. It's very comforting to me In a moment, I want to ask Janine to speak about the book study group that's going to start very soon. But I want to speak just a little bit about the context of that. If we are in denial about structural racism in our country, we're not remembering the difference in the response to those hoodlums, those misguided people, easily understood why they're misguided, who were attacking the Capitol yesterday. There were, I believe, 58 arrests. Do you remember what happened with the Black Lives Matter protests? There would have been many dead had those been people of color. So it's buried in our unconscious attitudes. And so, Janine, would you speak about the class or the gathering that you're going to be supporting?
I will. Thank you, Robert, for inviting me to do that. And actually, your words were about what I was going to reflect on too. That, it's been a while since the heat of the protests, and our first book group in June was right in the context of all of that. And maybe it's been easy with the uproar of the election to lose some focus on the need for racial justice and healing. But I think yesterday reminded us that we still have a lot of work to do. And so this book, The Inner Work of Racial Justice by Rhonda McGee, was chosen because it's about healing for us, and it helps us recognize our own healing, and it's related more to the Dharma than the last book was. And so it was chosen deliberately to reconnect the racial justice issues with the engaged Dharma. And this book really speaks to all of that. So it starts Tuesday evening next week, and we'll go for, I think, 11 weeks from 7 to 8:30. And I just ask you to consider if you need to recommit to racial justice. And I think Alicia just put the registration in the chat.
Oh, good. I was looking for it and couldn't find it.
So thank you.
Thank you, Janine. That was really well done, the way you asked that question and then left the pause. It was quite beautiful. Is it time? And I would say, by way of announcements, just a reminder that starting on the 20th, a rather big day in our country, my 8-session class over 12 weeks on the 4 foundations of mindfulness will be really foundational. It'd be very helpful for really understanding what one is doing in practice. And also Doug Pullen's Basics of Mindfulness will be starting the next day, 6 weeks. And I suppose I should mention that there is the opportunity to practice the joy of generosity and keep PIMC flourishing. And if you're not a monthly donor, please consider whether you'd like to do that. Because it's an important place. It's an important undertaking, and it's a doorway to much less suffering for many people. And you can do that by going to the website and If you wanted to, you could find a spot to make the contribution dedicated to this group if you want, but that's not necessary. And it's all about the joy of participation. So, what about you? Have you something you'd like to speak to today? Something that's rattling around in your heart that really wants to be said? I hear Tim.
You do indeed.
Hi, Tim.
Hi, everybody. I've been last night and this morning, struggling's not the right word, maybe attempting to readjust, attempting to look at this events of the last couple of days, especially yesterday and the District of Columbia, to look straight at it and not look away, but to try to look at it with serenity, to try to make that, find that perspective, to find that still point to do that. And that ain't easy, but it's possible, and I'm finding it, and then it slips away, and then I'm finding it again. Just look that straight in the eye, but with serenity, not without emotion, but without tumultuous emotion. The thing about where if you got a jar of water with some dirt in it, you shake it up and it's mud pie, and you let it sit for a little while. It's clear. Trying to get there.
Right.
Yeah, so that's what I'm trying to do.
Thank you, Tim. I have a little booklet. I wonder if I can find it. I'll see if I can for tomorrow. It's called Tales from the Magic Monastery. It's got these beautiful little vignettes in it. And one of them is a story of righteous indignation. And it's kind of a trap, righteous indignation, that I'm really angry and contracted, and I should be, and I'm right, and it's the way we torture ourselves and do a lot of harm. I'll try to find that. I just noticed it in myself when I spoke of the rioters. I think I called them thugs. And they're just ordinary people who've been swept up in an ideology which is a trance, and is a dangerous trance, but it's quite understandable.
Robert. I'd like to ask you a question.
Hello, Tanya.
Hi. I'm just, maybe it's more reassurance, but just say going back to, with your practice, like when you're going through an intense time, like you've done it, you said 50 years.
Yeah, isn't that weird? 50
It's
years.
kind of awesome.
Jeez.
Um,
You'd think, I would think I'd be, quote, further along than this. What a silly thing. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, so then when, like, you're saying about things like, I'm not going through a divorce, but, like, that was super painful and with your children. So then when you're, regardless, did you do your meditation no matter what state the mind or the body
You
is in?
betcha.
And you just kind of, just felt it.
Yeah. I have, having taught for so long, there are certain stories that are kind of fixed pieces. And one of them that I tell often is the one of my cedar tree, that the person who had been my wife for 17 years decided she wanted a divorce, and I was totally blindsided because I didn't have divorce on my pull-down menu. I was going to be like my parents and stay together no matter how grim and dark we became. I would stay together till the very end. And anyway, she surprised me, and it was awful, and I freaked out, totally freaked out. And for several nights before I moved out, I would go and I'd get the kids to bed, and then I'd go out and sit under a cedar tree in my backyard, and I would sit there in several cases till dawn, and because it didn't rain under the cedar tree and it was warm. And I'd sat there many, many times. Anyway, I would sit there and be completely lost in the trance for 15 or 20 minutes, half an hour, I don't know, for long times, just freaked out, hysterical internally. And then all of a sudden there'd be this thunderclap, sort of like, and it would stop, and there'd be mindfulness. And then I remember the comment, wow, the Buddha was right. We humans are insane. And then gone again for half an hour or whatever. And then awake. Oh, impermanence. It is all impermanent. And maybe wake up 10 times in the night or 20 times, maybe, max, maybe. But that was incredibly important practice. Because I was awakening out of the trance of the poor, frightened little guy who was hopeless and powerless and angry and hurt and sad, and the Buddha was awakening in the midst of that. So yes, and there was I had a time or two in my life when I was quite suicidal, and sitting in the middle of that was very important. Watching the impulses and feeling the depth of despair that was there, and then that passed on too. So yes, when happy and joyous and feeling really together, sit. When freaked out and depressed and whatever, sit. And on top of that, be mindful. When you're cutting carrots, cut carrots. When you're stepping into the shower, step into the shower, mindful. Be grateful for hot water. I know I talk about the hot water stuff often. Imagine the privilege to have hot running water in your house. And it's almost free. For many people in our city, it's beyond expensive. But most of us bathe, wash dishes, blah, blah, blah. It doesn't really enter our mind. So the privilege, we can reflect on that. So did that address what you were asking, Tanya? I went on a bit.
No, yes, it does. It just, just how the mind works. You always think, is there an easier way? Is there a better way? Is there a less suffering way? And yeah, so when you're questioning that, it's hard sometimes to just stay in it, you know?
Yeah.
And so just your advice, if that is really key, you know?
You sound a little Canadian. Are you Canadian?
Yes,
Yeah?
from British Columbia.
Aha! I see. Hello. I'm from Montreal originally.
Yes, I lived in Montreal before.
Huh. Yeah, and however, sometimes sitting isn't the right thing. Sometimes walking is the right thing. Sometimes sprinting is the right thing. Sometimes mindfully beating the bejeebies out of a pillow and staying really conscious of the anger that's there. It's not just the sitting. It's the attitude and practice of mindfulness. Thanks, Tanya.
Robert, you might know this. I actually have read that, I don't know if it's more female, but crying can be a release, but not too much crying, I find. But I've read that testosterone actually prevents, crying in some way. And it's, even though some guys might cry a lot, but that's why men might cry less than women.
Mm.
That it's scientifically proven.
Well, hormones are a big deal. They are anatta, and they change our lives radically. I've had the good fortune or curse to live with 3 women through menopause, and I have learned a lot. I've learned to be more and more humble in the face of hormones because they're extraordinarily potent.
Robert, it's Sky.
Hello, Sky.
I listened to your story about the cedar tree, and I was thinking about how what you were describing is this transformative properties of suffering.
Conscious suffering.
Yeah, yes. I mean, it doesn't transform your head.
Yep.
So, my question is about gratitude, that it's difficult to live with suffering, but when we remember gratitude, is that the key to transforming our suffering?
Gratitude.
I mean, gratitude is more the suffering that awakens us.
It's pretty hard for me to get to gratitude in the midst of really significant suffering. It's like, oh boy, I'm feeling terrible. How wonderful. However, where this mind goes in this moment is the exquisite beauty of the Four Noble Truths. When I'm suffering, when you're suffering, to really learn how to bear the suffering like a wagon bears a load, to consciously be in it, and then to sort of look to the side and ask and look, what's causing this suffering? And there's the curiosity in that. And then to see how it's always the demand for something to be different. I'd like more pleasure now, please. I'd like less pain now, or I want to become something different. It's this thirst or tanha. And that then through that study of the craving for things to be different, then the realization emerges that the Buddha called it nirvana, which is the quenching of the demand for things to be different. And then then there's gratitude galore, as that paradigm becomes clearer to us, and as our suffering starts to go down, and as we learn the toolbox of mindfulness and concentration and the 7 enlightenment factors, then gratitude kind of comes naturally.
So gratitude is more of a byproduct, and maybe curiosity is the key.
Well, how about the 7 enlightenment factors? It's not just one thing. It's a whole. Well, and you could say, well, actually, maybe it's moral and ethical behavior, because without getting that more shaped up, the chances of having a mind that can look at itself like this is very slight, if we're always in uproar because of our behavior. And then you could say, well, no, it's really generosity. That without generosity, we're stuck on home base, home play. Here's a sports analogy. How funny! You'll never make it to first base without generosity, because if we're all contracted and I, me, mine, then our meditation can't really go anywhere either. So it's getting out to being the Eightfold Path. But is that making sense?
It does. I guess I'm looking to figure out that suffering must have some kind of purpose and point. If it is the thing that a lot of times prompts us into that learning and growing.
Yeah, well, there's something implied in that, which is that life has to have a particular meaning. And my teacher, Matt Flickstein, really helped me with that one time when he said, life is neither meaningful nor meaningless, it just is.
Oh. There you go.
And we really want it to be meaningful, and when we have life being meaningful, we then need to be prepared for when it becomes meaningless and we're struggling like crazy to, why do I have no meaning? Well, it's because you had a lot of meaning for a while, and it exists as a polarity. And both meaninglessness and meaningfulness are really objects worthy of observation, because they're impermanent. And we suffer like crazy when meaningfulness turns to meaninglessness.
It's like a trap in itself.
All the dualities are traps, really. Or the traps, that's the wrong way to put it. They're places where we can get identified, and then we get to suffer the disappearance of them, and then we have another opportunity to learn how our suffering is being around. Oddly enough, it's a wheel, the Eightfold Path.
Go figure.
Yeah, what a shock.
Thank you, Ralph.
My pleasure. Though I suppose I should say, actually, this is shameless promotion. Really, it's the 4 foundations of mindfulness that are key. How silly. There is no key, it's just this.
Hi, Robert. Can you hear me?
Hello, is this Carolyn? Hi, Carolyn.
Yeah, it is how you can hear me. Stay good. I wanted to respond to that because I feel that I agree that there is no key. And sometimes there's just, I guess you could call it grace. I mean, I just something is driving a person to find peace, and the world is just like, I don't know if you've ever been caught in a wave in the ocean, just no bearings, no feet, no floor, no nothing, and boom, out of the back of your neck, something pulls you out. I don't know what that key this maybe is my own desire, my own longing, but I don't think so. Maybe a little. Maybe a little. Anyway, sometimes it's beyond hard. Beyond. Helping. Doing. It's all lost.
Yeah. And there isn't a magic bullet. Yeah. And at such times, having a practice to return to just for stability is, I find, really crucial. Though even then it can sometimes feel like dust.
Oh, absolutely. You know, Robert, I have to say, there were times after my son died that I would sit to practice and get to a certain place and then just be completely captured by regret or, thoughts of my own. I mean, my son died of cancer, but still, how was I responsible? What was my responsibility? How could I have changed this? Just like such a tight fist on my whatever responsibility. And it never was that I gave up practice, but I sure did lose something. Lose, I guess, my feeling that I was good at it. That's what it is. My feeling that I was a good devotee, a good practitioner, that I did it. I lost that pride, I guess, or something. I don't know. I don't even know what I'm talking about. Really, I'm just trying to express my own experience, which is kind of coming up because Josh died February 2nd, and it's sort of coming up for me, and this conversation is bringing it there, and it was very, very, very much a struggle between this amazing feeling that I had never, ever, ever felt before, this waves of incredible grief, like my body was getting pulled apart, and my awareness that, yes, this is life, this is the circle, this is birth and death. Yes, I know, but I can't help it. I feel this.
Mm-hmm.
And still, I got to you in the morning through a friend's recommendation.
Mm.
And when I felt that peace inside, and I felt that support, that it wasn't just me struggling to get there on my own, because honest to God, Robert, I couldn't really sustain it. I couldn't concentrate. I just couldn't for years. And with that support of the Sangha and of your guidance, I'm feeling stronger and stronger in that every day in my ordinary life, which is what I really want to experience as a householders, that melting together of the divine and the sacred and the profane, I guess you'd say.
Mm.
And yeah, a little help from my friends, absolutely.
Right, Sangha. It's not by accident, it's there in the precepts.
No, I don't think so. I don't think it's an accident, but I don't know what the key was. I don't have the key.
Hmm. Is that you and Josh behind your left shoulder?
No, that's Josh's oldest son, Jonah, who is now 24.
Oh.
Uh-huh. Yeah, Jonah.
Huh.
He looks like Josh, though.
Huh. The only thing that it makes sense for me to say, I think, is first this. Thank you for bringing your beautiful self and sharing so poignantly. And I heard a long time ago about, it's a story from the Tibetan world. Marpa was one of the founders of Tibetan Buddhism, so long time ago. And he had several children. And one of the children died. And Marpa was grieving mightily. And one of his students came to him and said, "Master, why are you carrying on like this? Don't you teach us that the world is a dream and a great illusion?" And his reply, potent, was, "Of course it's an illusion. And the death of one's child is the most painful illusion." And so both are true. Both, it tears from the inside. And maybe simultaneously, it really is the dance of life. It is and they're paradoxical, hence they're not, it's not like they go, "Oh, phew, great, now I've got only one this side." It's that both are true. And to be able to grieve deeply, to really honor the mother side, while simultaneously using that to awaken to the fact that, of course, it's a dream. Means we can hold both. And it's ridiculously difficult. Being a human, I mean, that's the realization that slowly dawns on me is how difficult it is to be a human. And our denial is remarkable. I had someone ask me the other day, a comment that she made about herself. Maybe how did it go? Maybe I'm just overdoing it here with the difficulties in my life, and she's really a person turning toward her practice very deeply. And she said, "I see all these people who are so happy, and that's not been my experience with anybody that I've met and gotten to know at any kind of depth. Life is really difficult. And if it isn't right now, wait 5 minutes, or wake up a little bit, or cut your drinking in half, or because it is. And with practice, we get to live more fully and more joyfully and more lovingly and compassionately because it's so difficult. And we can see that nobody, those forks, jeez, those people storming the Capitol yesterday, the agony that they're experiencing in order to act in that way. The separation, the sense of me and them, and oof, they may be experiencing it as elation and self-righteousness and so on. But when they pause, it's there underneath. There's a tremendous agony. Thanks for sharing so beautifully. One more question. How long ago did Josh die? You'll need to unmute. Yeah.
It'll be 12 years, February 2nd. So, long time ago.
Yeah, I was about to say, oh, just yesterday.
Yeah, and just yesterday.
Right. Thanks. Oh my goodness, it's 25 after 8. How wonderful to use our time in this incredible way. How do I... I'm trying to get you off the hot seat here. Oh, no. What's going on here? Oh, I got it, finally. Well, friends, anything urgent, anything banging at the door to be spoken before we go? Well, please unmute yourself. And remembering that the happy and may all beings be happy is actually may all beings receive all blessings. Bhavatu Sabe Mangalam. May all beings be happy. May all beings be happy. May all beings be happy. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Goodbye, dear friends.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Blessings to everyone.
Blessings. Thank you.
Hey, Denise. Any excitement on the farm lately?
Yeah, another dead cow.
Like, that must be more common than I would have thought.
Well, we have 25 cows and 30 sheep. So, just, yeah.
It just happens.
Well, it happens, and we're in the process of kind of recovering from a borderline animal hoarding issue as we take over my partner's
parents' ranch. So it's kind of we're in a decreasing of animals phase.
Ah. And where are you?
We're in Kings Valley, so just out of Corvallis.
What's it called?
Kings Valley.
Yeah.
And then sometimes I'm in Corvallis too, because I have a house as well. But it's
Huh.
most of the time.
Well, thanks for bringing yourself to us.
Of course, I'm so grateful to be here all the time.
Take care. Bye-bye. Goodbye, everyone. Goodbye. Whoops. Goodbye, dear friends on Facebook and YouTube.